Episode 70 of People I Know show. Tibor Majzik joining me from Denmark. Tibor, we had a conversation about a month ago when I was visiting, and that's going to follow this conversation, but it's such a global issue going on, the pandemic of COVID-19. Tibor, hello, and I want to know what is happening with this in Denmark. How has it changed your life?
Hi, Curt. It's nice to see you again. And yes, it's interesting that was it a month ago when you were here, and it still felt so distant. All this situation, what's happening in China, and now it's here, and it's also there in US as I follow the news. So it's quite interesting how it suddenly affects all the people all around the world. And there's one positive thing about it, that it's connecting us all. So but other than that, I cannot. It's pretty bad, the situation. So we had to change our lives a bit.
And I do recall, as around the time I was there or shortly thereafter, there was like a global shipping thing for your company, and not very
Yeah.
long that they no longer were letting you come into work. So I haven't gone to work now for about a week, and it's going to go for longer. When's the last time that you stepped foot into your office building?
That was so actually 2 weeks ago exactly. So a month ago we had like a global travel ban, so we canceled all our business. Yeah, we were not so happy about it, but we were not expecting that in such a short time that we will have also the restrictions we have now. And yeah, we have to work from home. We have home offices, and they still run the operation, and the factories in some countries are open, but yeah, they prepare for the worst. So
And
it's yep.
do you get a sense of how long that the minimum plan is for this to be before things get back to normal? Did they even put out dates for you? Or just
Yes, it was 2 weeks ago when the Danish government announced that we should work from home, and then most of the Danish companies have followed the suggestions, and yeah, they sent home everyone who can work from home. And yeah, just 2 days ago they prolonged it until the was it 13th of April. So it's gonna be at least 5 weeks in total. Could be even more. They're preparing for more as well. So it's first they had a 2 weeks uh, period, and now they prolonged it. So
And what about the cases there? The numbers, the testing is so different, I think, in many different countries. How good of a job do you think Denmark is doing with cases and really tracking it? And are people
hmm.
dying at a rate higher or less than other places that you see?
Yes, it's very interesting, this virus. I think it's a huge social test to see how different societies are reacting for such issue. And yeah, I'm not sure what was true, what we heard from China, but it's definitely more dangerous than what people expected. And we saw it immediately when it arrived to Italy. And then I'm always wondering if those countries which are still wondering, oh, it's not gonna hit us, and for some magical reasons we will not have the same impact like they have it in Italy, and we should live just normally. Those countries will be wrong, and it's so easy to bet against them. It's uh, it's for my understanding, it's inevitable. And in Denmark, apparently they're very good at taking big uh, restrictions, and the people follow them. So it was not a question for people who had to work from home, and yeah, the companies immediately made the decision, and they were not hesitating. And but also it has a huge financial support from the state. So what I also follow the news, and they economically prepare for it as well, and they will provide a huge financial help for the people who will lose their jobs. And they try to help the companies as much as possible so they can keep the the people in their employment. And
Are
on the other hand, what they do in healthcare, they really try to prepare for it as much as possible. And I think at the moment we have 1,500 people, approximately, maybe around 20 people dead. So it's not as severe as in Italy. But I think it's also because people really follow the suggestions, and they don't do unnecessary trips, so to say.
so from what you're saying, Denmark seemed quite prepared to make the adjustments during this time to kind of minimize how bad it might get. And of course, it's not over. We'll still see how it goes, and that'll go as we get into the rest of the conversation following this. The conversation we had about a month ago talk about some aspects of Denmark in that way, but I'm also curious, as we get into in the other conversation, with Hungary being where you're from, talking with your family back home, what do you know what's been happening there, and how prepared they are in Hungary for the coronavirus?
Yeah, that's also interesting. That I think it's a lot about in the society about the trust. That in Denmark people trust each other, and they know if they have to make these restrictions, then it's for the better good, for the common good for each other, and they understand that. Of course, there are always people who are skeptical, and they try to find the back door, and try to, yeah, I can still do that and that, and but yeah, in Denmark I think they better to follow these restrictions. In Hungary, it's also the healthcare is different. So the healthcare, it's much developed in Denmark than in Hungary. And that's something I guess also the government is aware of, that if they will have this pandemic hitting hard in Hungary, it could be as dramatic as in Italy, or even worse. So they have to do everything to prevent it. And unfortunately, not everyone understands that. So I hear it from my family. It was also difficult for them to. They didn't understand why am I so. Not they think I'm panicking. I'm not panicking. I'm saying that you have to be very, very cautious in this situation. And yeah, it's what I hear from, or what I've also seen on social media. There are different kind of people. Some people still saying that it's made by the CIA to destroy the Chinese economy, but now it's hitting US. So like there are always these people who have no sense. So unfortunately, and they don't want to follow this restrictions because they don't understand it.
Yeah, the
So
people that come up with the conspiracy theories of why it's
yes,
happening, I suppose at some point in history it's possible someone would create some virus that would do this, but regardless if that's happening now or not, it's still happening. And no matter the origin, it's going to have the same effect that we're seeing in some of these countries that have experienced it earlier than ours. I know United States, the total number of cases is quickly
yeah,
approaching more than any other country in the world, and our government is because of the leadership or lack thereof at the top is in putting us in position
interesting.
the worst of any country in the world, and it shouldn't have to be. But that's a whole nother conversation. But I do like to get the perspectives of different people throughout the world, and you have the perspective of Denmark and of Hungary from your background.
Yeah. Yeah, what people have to understand on the top and on the bottom as well is about that this virus is not picking the poor or the rich. It's hitting everyone. And it really shows how the community works as a whole. So as I mentioned, I think it's a huge uh, society test.
It is, and
So it's
I saw the news today. Who is it? One of the Prince was a Prince. I don't want to get the name wrong. I got to pull up my news here. But we're recording this on Wednesday, and Prince Charles tested positive. So So, and he's in his 70s, and who knows what's going to happen with that or with anyone that gets it. But it's more and more people that we've heard of or know, or people. There's a relative of the husband of a relative of mine that has it too, and I don't know where that's going. It's really it's scary, and the longer it goes, the more people we're going to be aware of that get it, unless our countries do a better job. It seems like Denmark's doing pretty good, and the United States not so good.
Yeah, it's also fewer people, so it's easier to. As I also seen it that in one of the few cases when having a dictatorship is it could actually happen quick and do the drastic restrictions that's necessary, that like they did in China. But in the other end, also if you have many people who have to discuss it with and lots of people to align with, and every day is counting, and yeah, it's very very hard.
Yep.
And a few people it's easier. In the US, it's very very difficult. As I see it, it's so diverse.
A lot of bureaucracy, and it doesn't go as quickly, I think, as we would like. And the other thing you mentioned, yes, the fewer people population in Denmark, that there's a lot of, as when we were there, a lot of empty space in a lot of the country. Same within the United States, where there's towns and there's a lot of roads and trees. But for us people living in the more sparse part of the country, it's not hitting us as quickly. But we look at New York City, we look at Los Angeles, Seattle, some of these cities that were hit first. That if you're living in close quarters with other people, coming in contact with a lot of people on a daily basis, it's going to spread.
But then how about Tokyo and Hong Kong and all those very populated Asian cities? It's as big as New York. Still, it seems that they could control the virus there.
Doing a better job, it seems, for sure. And I know that with some of the epidemics back maybe 15 years ago, they had to deal with it worse then, and I think they're more prepared for this one now. And we in this country didn't seem like we were prepared at all. Somehow, like we never knew.
Yeah, it's even in this current situation, for people it feels strange to wear a mask. It's something that the Asians do, and in the Western cultures, it's not basic.
No.
Even now, when it's a catastrophe. Of course, now we're running out from masks, but it's also, if it would be more normal for the people to wear it in a normal flu season, then the countries would have bigger stocks as well.
And I will not be surprised if we see more of that in Western countries following this. If once we get the supply of masks back to a point where people can do that.
Yeah, could be. Lots of people could be saved in the past from normal diseases, or so to say regular flus, if people would be more cautious for each other. And so it's also lots of learning from this for everyone. So yeah, and this virus will be over, I think, not that soon as might people hope for it, but we'll get over it. The interesting part is the what's gonna come after, because it will hit the economy. It already hitting it, so it's not so good.
Definitely. Well, the world is changing from this, and it's amazing kind of how fast this is going, as we chatted about a month ago, and so much has happened since then.
It's just an interesting, when I was following the US news, that there are big manufacturers like Tesla and was it General Motors and Ford, that they should produce like ventilation machines now, right? And medical equipments. Something that they change the production so they can support the healthcare with equipment.
I know Ford is starting to do that for sure. Yes.
Maybe it's over exaggerating, but I think the last time when they changed the production in companies like that was in the Second World War.
Mm.
But now we're fighting against something that we cannot see. So
it's a strange time, Tibor. I think we'll leave it for the sake of the podcast at that point for now, and it'll transition into our conversation. When I was in your home, the home that I can see, I can recognize here as we're watching on the video.
mm-hmm. Yes. Now it's we had to rearrange it a bit. It's a bit messy, but now we have the dining table, and one side of the dining table is my home office. The other side is Yuki's language school. And in the middle, we have the restaurant. So that's that's how we split the dining table.
Home offices around the world are adapting, or homes are adapting to become a home office, and I guess
Yes.
you're making the best of your situation.
Yeah, we are very, very lucky here because we live 1 minute from a forest. I think it's like 5 kilometers long, so it's a big forest. So, and there's no people there, so we can go running, we can go for walking. But now it's starting to be a bit boring because we pretty much walked over all the streets in Byangbro. So yeah, we don't have a car, unfortunately. So, and we don't want to use the train, so it's a bit limited. But at least we are still luckier than the people who live in the big cities like Aarhus, which is around 200,000 people. So it's a huge city. And they have to stay at home and they shouldn't go to the street. And as I know, there's still no curfew, but people don't go out. So it looks very empty, the city.
You see images from around the world in some of these places that always have a ton of vehicles or a ton of people, and they're empty.
Yeah. I'm really curious about India. When I saw the news yesterday that they locked down 1.3 billion people, like how?
Yeah.
Like, and you see, that's the measurement that other countries do. And I'm a bit worried about US when I see like what the discussion is about, and when you can hear the expert who knows better than everyone else about the coronavirus. So it's interesting.
Well, I'd imagine a month from now, if we chat again, a lot of different things will be happening. But we'll take it from this conversation to the one from a month ago, because I really appreciated learning about you and Denmark, and I hope the people that might be taking this in can really get a good global perspective, not only on the coronavirus, but also just life in Europe. That is it's very different from here in the United States, and I think your perspective and what you've done.
But also here, it's also now you can clearly see the differences between the European countries as well, and the cultures and how they react for this situation as well. It really emphasizes the differences. And I thought, for example, that Norway, Sweden, and Denmark is the same. And when I hear the news that in Sweden they don't take it seriously at all. Meanwhile, in Denmark they have much more severe restrictions. And now in Sweden they get in trouble, so it's no big surprise. But I thought that they somewhat aligned with the decisions and mentality, and not really. So
we are in the middle of an experiment that
yes,
a lot's going to change.
Lots of PhD students will write research about this, and there's something for people who write the history books as well. So
yeah.
Yes.
Tibor, thank you. And
yes,
we'll keep chatting here, but thank you for recording this little opening here for this podcast episode, because I think it really brings a nice global sense to what's going on. Thanks again, Tibor.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I hope I could contribute to it and help people also to have a better understanding what's happening in the world. And it was a great time again chatting with you.
Curt Carstensen here for People I Know show, and I'm with Tibor Majzik. Tell me where we're at right now, and why am I here? Bjergbro.
Yes.
Denmark.
Yes, it's in Denmark. I'm not saying in the middle of nowhere. It's a quite cozy place. Not so many people. Only 8,000 as far as I know. On work days, it's 16,000 because of the huge company we have in this town. And yes, you and I, we met in Australia in 2018?
It was about two years ago.
2 years ago,
End of February 2020, and it was mid-February 2018.
It was the Great Barrier Reef. We've been on a trip together. Yes, you, George, and Jacob, as I remember. Yes.
There was, a tour of 15, 20 people, and we were the only 4 guys.
Yes, and that was put together with all these crazy Americans. Yes, I was traveling alone, and I was thrown together with you guys, and that's how we met and get in contact. And then, you recently texted me that you're planning to come to Europe.
Well, I think I reached out thinking about my podcast and talking to different people that I've met through different reasons.
Yes.
And I reached out to see how you are and talked about that, but then when I didn't know where you were living.
Yeah.
Because you're not from here.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm originally from Hungary.
From Hungary?
Yes. And I live in Denmark now, luckily together with my wife, who is also not from Denmark, but she's also not from Hungary either. So actually she's from Japan, and we met in Australia. So it's my life been a bit around the world, luckily. So it's but here I am in this peaceful little town called Bjergbro now, with you, meeting after 2 years. It's the world is small. That's always my experience. So it's always nice to meet with people after some time who I've seen in places I could never imagine. So
that's one of the reasons that when I knew you were here, Denmark, I'm going to Sweden tomorrow.
Yes.
And I thought, Denmark's close to Sweden. Bjergbro to Stockholm, not necessarily.
Yes.
Getting here from Crete, south of Greece, wasn't the easiest thing in the world to do.
Yes.
But knowing that we're going to Sweden, I thought, if I'm ever going to come visit you, this seems to be the time to visit you.
Yeah, it's relatively close to Sweden, so but it's not a typical touristic place to visit. So it's
no, it was not.
So
I didn't get the sensation that anyone would have expected that a couple of American guys would be wandering around Aarhus on Bjergbro, definitely not. Aarhus,
we have a lot of visitors from around the world, but they are all business visitors.
Okay.
So they're not here for the beauty of Bjergbro.
But maybe you share this experience because you've traveled several places. But when I meet someone while traveling that I connect with, I'd like to see them again. It's not.
Yes.
It's not just okay. I'll see you once, have a good life. It's if I can see you once every so many years, a couple more times in my life, and make that happen, I want to do it because it's cool and it's fun.
Yes, definitely. That's also what I'm trying to do when I'm traveling. Also, when I was in Australia, it was due to an exchange semester in Sydney for half a year. But before that, I had another exchange semester in South Korea for half a year, and I met 2 Australian guys. And I was like, I thought I'm in Australia. I won't be closer to them again, or I cannot be closer than this, so I will visit them. But apparently, close is a bit different in Australia. So one of them was living in Newcastle, so that was around 2.5-hour train ride from Sydney to the north. And my other friend, he was living in Melbourne, so that's 2 hours flight.
Yeah.
So that's also a different closeness.
Did you see them
and I met with them, and apparently it turned out that they haven't seen each other since in Korea we hang out together. But when I visited my friend in Melbourne, then the other friend was also planning to visit to Melbourne, and he just called me, by the way, I'm also in Melbourne, and then the 3 of us met in a Korean restaurant. So that was quite a reunion. So the world is smaller than we think. And
if you're motivated to get somewhere and see people,
yes, you can do that.
and you have to have some amount of extra money, usually, but not always. Sometimes it can be pretty affordable.
Yes. It's also it's about the preferences. What people think it gives value to their life and what brings them forth. So, yeah, I believe in traveling. That's nice.
And I'm usually motivated by when I go somewhere, two things. It's I want to go somewhere new, and somebody that I want to see, could see, usually brings it together. I wouldn't have come to Denmark this trip if you weren't living here. But I've never been to Denmark, and I wanted to go to Denmark. It's a cool place to be.
Yeah, it's especially when you go places that you were not planning to go. Then you can always see something new and experience something new and learn from them. So if you want to go somewhere, probably because you heard about it, so you have some knowledge already about the place. So, but I think Denmark is there's a lot of surprises here. I think in the last 2.5 days you spent here, probably you've seen some new things.
Well, my whole life when I heard Denmark, ever since I've heard of Denmark, I thought Copenhagen. So I thought I would go to Copenhagen, but we didn't, just trying to do a lot of things on a couple of weeks, we didn't give ourselves any time to go to Copenhagen. And you mentioned the city near you, Aarhus. Am I saying it right?
Aarhus, yes.
It's the second largest city in Denmark.
Yes.
I had never heard of it until just a few weeks ago
Yes.
when you told me about it. And today, Brad, who's traveling with me, we spent the day in Aarhus, and it's a great city.
Yes.
Very clean, a lot of interesting things. We had our first Danish meals because for the last couple nights, you and then your wife Yuki have cooked you a Hungarian goulash.
Yes.
And we had like the most glorious plate of sushi this evening that Yuki made, and so we had one chance to have a Danish meal, really.
Yeah, it's I'm not complaining about the Danish food, but again, Denmark is not famous because of food, but there are some good meals that worth to try, and it's nice. So.
And I know this story, but I want you to share it again. How and why is a Hungarian guy in Denmark and then in Australia for long enough that we crossed paths there, and now you've began a life here with your wife who's not from here in Denmark. Explain why this happens for someone like you.
Yeah, it's all began when. So I had my high school in Hungary I finished when I was 18, and then applied for universities in Hungary, and I could get into the highest positions there and very nice programs. But they had some changes in the education system, and it was something about that if you cannot complete your education, because by the way it's free in Hungary, but if you cannot complete it, then you have to pay back the tuition fee. And I was a bit unsure, like, I have good grades and I could get into any program in the country, but what if something happens? What happens? I'm studying, I cannot finish the school, and I have this insecurity. It's something that I was a bit skeptical of if it's the right thing to do. So then I started to look around, and my friend came to me, and she was in Denmark already for a year. And then she said that, by the way, in Denmark, the education is completely free for every EU citizen. There is no contract that you have to sign. If you cannot complete it, then you have to pay back anything. And it's in English. I was like, okay. Is it true? I was like, how does this work? And she also said if you can find some student job, then you can have more than enough to finance yourself. So you're completely independent from your parents. And it's only when you can make it. So
when you first explained this, like, I knew that Denmark was one of the countries where you can get a lot of things for free, like that we don't get in the United States, like education and healthcare.
Yes.
But the fact that you were from just another country in Europe and you could take advantage of the same thing, you just go there and you get it.
Yes.
Go here.
That was very surprising for me as well. So Yes, but I was like, okay, I have nothing to lose because it's free, and yeah, if what happens, I lose a year and then I come back to Hungary and start again. But anyway, let's give a shot and see how it's in Denmark. And by the way, before that, I'd never been abroad. I'd never really met foreigners. I never had this experience. It was not really a case in my family that we could travel abroad. So it was something that I was really, really interested about and dreamt about. And then, okay, let's try. Let's see. I mentioned to my parents. They were supporting me. They were not sure what's gonna happen. I wasn't sure either. I had no clue what I'm doing. But I found myself on a plane for the very first time, flying to Denmark, moving to Denmark, and yeah, I started slowly the life here, and it wasn't easy in the beginning. That was quite difficult. But I also learned it here that if you want something and you work for it, you can achieve it. So it's doable.
So you did this for the first year, and because you mentioned just a few minutes ago that tried a year, but you've done it. So after a year, how did that kind of shift your life and what you were thinking about it?
Yes, so the university, or it's actually a college I was studying for my bachelor, it was not recognized like on international rankings, and in Hungary it was like, yeah, people looking at the ranking of universities, but what I immediately noticed is that it's a completely different way of educating, and very practical, very, very engaging for students. And the teachers are very direct. We have a very friendly relationship with our teachers, and it was so much fun to study. And I really enjoyed the years. In Hungary, I was mentally preparing for that, okay, I have to go through the university, and it's gonna be tough mentally. Like, there's lots of stress, and I hear, yeah, it's sometimes ruins people's life. But in Hungary it was fun. I really enjoyed it, and because I enjoyed it, I could do more and achieve more. And it was always a miracle, not miracle, but it was. I just couldn't believe. Like every time I could get better and better opportunities, and I just started to feel my career is really ramping up, and nothing I expected during the university. And then you get this feedback from the environment that it works. If you work for it, it will get better. And sometimes it gets worse a bit, but then it gets back better 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be afraid. You can just try. You have to be brave and go for it. And that's how I came across with. I found a nice internship at a nice Danish company. And I found out about this opportunity to study in South Korea for half a year as an exchange student. I was like, yeah, let's go for it. Like, why not? And then I was not expecting, because I heard that it's difficult to get in and there are students who have higher chance to get the position, but I got it. Okay, then let's go. See what happens. And then this shock of throwing myself something completely new was again when I arrived to South Korea. But then I went through that period as well. And then I learned, okay, it's possible. You
had done that from Hungary to
Denmark. And then
you went for it and it worked. So you started going for things.
I went to Korea, it works. It's so simple. So, and then when I finished my bachelor, then I continued right away with my master's degree. And it was not even, actually it was so easy to go those really. Like, yeah, it's easy, you just apply. If you get it, yeah, just go for it, it works. So, and you should seize these opportunities. And yeah, it was very, very, very nice experience when I could go there. So it was completely different when I was in Asia. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed the time being down under there.
So you've had these experiences now, and you're settling into living here. What does your family, when you talk to your family, they were supportive initially, or do you know, can you kind of gauge what they think and what they say?
About settling down in
about the life you've taken on since leaving years ago.
I would say I'm the weirdo in the family. So it's not common, not even among my friends. It's not
not common to some of them live abroad for short years for some temporary work, but not to decide, okay, have a life completely abroad and kind of live internationally rather than locally. So and after all these experiences, I would say it's still not much. There's still plenty of places to visit and experience, but I found Denmark the most relaxing and the most safest place to live. Even though the language barriers that we face here as internationals, because the Danish language is quite difficult, but 93% of the Danish people speak English.
So you can speak to everyone in English mostly,
yes.
But they still Danish.
Yes.
They speak
yes,
it. Everyone they speak it amongst themselves.
Yes,
but
yes.
when you don't speak it, they can.
If you
easily
like
adapt.
to be part of the society,
Yeah.
then you should speak some Danish, so you can open up some doors. So that's important here.
I want to talk more about Denmark, but first, with Hungary, you mentioned your family and you being the weird one in the family. You know, in the United States, we hear about a lot of like the major Western Europe countries and some of the maybe more economically important Asian countries and other but Hungary and other countries in Eastern Europe, unless something really bad is going on there, we don't hear anything about it. So tell me what some random guy like me from the United States that's not yet been to Hungary, what should I know about it? What's going on there?
I would say, if I would generally explain the situation in Europe, we had this thing called the Soviet Union, and it was running for some years, and it pretty much resulted 30 years of gap between East and West Europe, and it's still something that people are trying to catch up with. One thing about economically and the industry, but also socially, to get that feeling of get those skills of living in a democracy. Denmark is a democracy for, I think, I always have to memorize this date, but I think more than 150 years or something like that. Hungary officially a democracy since 1989.
Wow.
So they have quite an advantage. And if you look at the rates, how many people go for elections here and voting, it's almost everyone. So they really know how to play democracy and being a good citizen here. And you can see that it works here. But in Hungary, that was one of the reasons. I could see that when they changed these things in education and we went to protest, but it didn't matter at all. You could see that, some people don't agree, even not all of my friends, but I don't agree with the political situation at home. So, and that was the motivation to try out something new. And when I realized that the life can be so much more, how to say, I can achieve my dreams here, and it's only based on myself. At Hungary, I feel like I'm dependent on others. I have to be a friend of someone who knows someone.
You have to know the right people.
Networking is important everywhere, but I can see the limits. If you don't have the network, or you are not the relative of someone, then it could be a barrier. So, and also that I'm interested in engineering. That's my profession as well, and pretty much all the developments what I'm more interested about are happening in West Europe and in the Western countries, more developed countries. So I've seen more interesting challenges and professional things there. But also the lifestyle here, it's completely different than in Hungary, and it's very, very family oriented, and I see it as a nice place to live. And I know in Hungary it will be nice as well in 30 years. But
30 years from now here, who knows?
Yes, exactly. So that's always it's always getting better here as well, as I see. So.
And even Denmark in the United States, unless you're really seeking it out, you don't know a ton about Denmark. I don't think people do, but maybe we know that it's with the Scandinavian countries, like really liberal with the social programs. And I know we've talked a little bit about that in our time here so far. What would you then say to someone that's never been here? What have you adapted to and really recognized about the people from here that stands out to you that you think is fairly unique to Denmark?
They are happy.
They're happy.
Truly happy. Not because they have huge cars. As we discussed, car is a special topic here because it's extremely expensive. But in the other end, they really can find the time for themselves and for their family. And here, it's obvious that family is much more important job. So they can really live and not live to work, but they do the work. Of course, they enjoy the work as well. At least the ones who can find a profession they like. But it's they can be themselves in a way. So they don't have to do something because otherwise the system will let them go down and they will end up on the street or something. We were talking earlier tonight about stress. Like, I recognize that no one honked their horn, like, at all in my experience here driving. Yes.
And I've kind of always related that to people that are unhappy or stressed out that are more likely to honk their horn in different places. Do you like recognize anyone at your workplace or anyone else you come across that seems stressed out around here? Are Danish people stressed? It's not accepted. Sometimes if you have like short deadlines, we can feel that. But short-term stress. Short-term stress, but not constant stress. That's very seriously considered here. So if, let's say, in a company, if you report that there is a stressful environment, then HR will look into that and it's not good for everyone, and especially in Denmark they have a lots of innovation and development. You can't innovate if you are stressed. The creativity comes when you have a relaxed mind and you don't have negative thoughts or other thoughts that would close this creativity. So I think it could be also maybe in my situation in that specific area, but in general the people are much less stressed here than everywhere. And you were telling a story about what seemed like a really open door policy within this company of 20,000 people you can. The CEO has an open door, and you can, if you really want to talk with him, you can have a talk with him, and you can in our department as well. Like the director can easily talk with the cleaner lady. It's okay. It's a very, very flat society. There's no titles. So some of my colleagues, I didn't even know that they have a PhD, but apparently they have. If I check their LinkedIn profile, then I can see they have a PhD. Or if they make an international presentation, then they know in some countries the title is important, then they put there. But with other Danish colleagues, and everyone just call each other on their first name. Also with the university, with the professors, just first name directly. We call each other, and it's the openness and it's very important. And I think one of the main aspects of society here is that, meanwhile, that's in Hungary, you have to earn the trust. In Denmark, you can lose the trust. Mm-hmm. And based on this, you can achieve a lot of things. So everyone enters with a very trusting mind. Yes. Someone they've never seen before, never worked with. Yes. They're trusting them initially. Yes. I was, first time when I arrived, I was so shocked. There are no fences. I can see that there's a house with a garden. There's no fence. There's no big, like military dogs with a chain on or something to protect the property. And you can see all the gardening equipments, and bicycle and everything. Is there crime here? Sometimes, but not by Danish people. And that's a relatively new thing that
yeah, some people, I'm not saying they don't leave the mindset at home, but they see it as an easy way to steal things, because the Danish people, they trust the people, they trust each other. So why to spend, I don't know how many millions of crowns on fences when it's simple like that? You just don't steal from the other, then you don't need a fence, right? But
if your needs
some
are
foreign
met,
gangs take advantage of this.
if your needs are met, you're less likely to need to steal things.
Yes.
Would you say, so you're coming from Eastern European country?
We say central, but
Central, okay.
in principle, everything that belonged to the Soviet Union, that's Eastern Europe. So.
And you just mentioned some of the gangs, maybe for the people that aren't from here. Do you get any sense of a racism or prejudice against people that aren't Danish living here?
I don't feel it directly. I think they're very open to foreigners, and there is of course a national part, and they always complain about foreigners, but in principle most of Danish people are friendly towards foreigners, and they don't experience any racism. So it's, at least I haven't experienced. Of course, sometimes you tend to think that of course they give advantages to Danish people. I certainly felt it when I was applying for scholarships. I mean, when my Danish classmates could get 5 times more than me, their grades were not 5 times better than mine. So, but that's how it is. It's I accept it, and so, but we don't have like any insults or any attacks or anything. I never really experienced. There are some districts in the bigger towns in Copenhagen and in Aarhus as well, but I just hear things. I never went there, and of course I'm not planning to go there, but what I hear is about problem with second and third generation immigrants. So the kids of the immigrants and refugees, that they can't really find their place in Denmark, in a way that they're born in Denmark, they speak Danish, but their culture is different because of the family, and then they make gangs and trouble. So, but again, it's not accepted to discriminate here. It's completely unacceptable. So,
and as you mentioned earlier, and I've spent the last couple of days getting to know your wife, and she's not from here, but together, she's from Japan, and you met in Australia. You said you met me before you met her, and that was 2 years ago.
Yes.
Things are moving quickly. You're married here, but you're planning to make your life here, at least for a while.
Yes. Even though in the beginning she was a bit uncertain, like Japan is also a developed country, and you can get good job, and there are lots of job possibilities probably for me as well in engineering. That's more international. But I really wanted her to experience that. It's difficult because we have to learn the language, but if you get to see the life here, and by life I mean when you start to have a job and see how's the work relation, and it makes a huge difference. It's something that it's very, very difficult to live without. This there's no unnecessary hierarchy, and in Japan as well, like it's very known about the unhealthy work culture and the very male-dominated society, and the hierarchy, and all the bad aspects of that. And now, since she started an internship, she could see more how is it actually working in Denmark, and so far good. So now she can more. She can also imagine, like, yes, this is a place to have a family and settle down, and we have to learn the language, but it's nothing comes for free. Even it sounds like everything is free in Denmark, but you have to put the effort into it. So
to really fit in, to excel here, you need to be a part of it.
Yes. Yes, yes.
And what I think is interesting, one of many things is interesting, that because you met in Australia and your common language is English, so
Yes.
you speaking English to me and to Brad since we've been here, that's normal because you're speaking English in the home all the time.
Yes, I had my educations in English and my profession, everything is in English. I have many international colleagues, and for me it's more natural. Even though sometimes I have difficulties with native speakers, they have some expressions that I cannot understand, or some jokes sometimes it's difficult to capture. But it's working for us. When we met with Yuki for the first time, she was in Australia to learn English. In Japan, they have very limited possibilities to practice the language. And when I met with her, then I noticed, yeah, she has lack of some language skills, but I could see what's behind, so the personality, and that's why we are married and living together. And yeah, the language will come. I was not worried about that. I knew also from myself, because when I came here to Denmark, I had difficulties with the language. But as soon as I was pushed into the situation, then I had to learn it.
With the Danish language?
With the English.
With English language?
With English as well, I had difficulties in the
Okay,
beginning.
yeah.
Because the same way in Hungary, we don't have, it's not common that we can practice the language. So we learn theoretically,
Yeah.
but that's not the way you use a language. And yes, her friends are all shocked that now we can have fluent discussions, and yes, it's not an issue. It was something that was like, yeah, it's easy it's not a big challenge. And then the same with the Danish. It's difficult, but we will overcome that. It's not something we should be very worried about, and we just have to be patient. It's all about patience. So
when I speak to you in English, I don't notice much like Australian vernacular or British terms, or necessarily American. Do you relate more to any of them? Do you speak more to anyone from anywhere?
I had lots of Eastern European classmates in the school, and sometimes someone said they have Russian accent, but I don't know. It's difficult to tell. But I never really listened to my voice, and it could be. But certainly, with people who also learn the language, we have similar vocabulary.
Yeah.
So, and then I meet with native speakers who come from, with a whole much bigger vocabulary. They can talk nicely, and it's nice to talk with those people as well, because I can learn some phrases from them as well. So it's nice.
It's funny because when I met you in Australia, it's difficult, or it was difficult for me to go to Australia. Some people in Australia have really thick Australian accents, and it's hard for me to even understand them. Was it difficult for you in that country?
Not really with the Australian. I think for me it's the British English. That's the most difficult, or Scottish, or
that could be
Welsh,
for me also.
So that's more difficult. The American, Australian, British is, most of the time it's also okay. So, but then, of course, then there are these nations which have not native English speakers, like the Indian. That's difficult. I had difficulties with the Japanese English as well, but the more time we spend together, then I can hear it easily, and I notice that sometimes other people it's more difficult to understand Yuki, but I can understand just because I'm more used to that accent. Or the same when I was living in Australia, there was also a Vietnamese woman, and it was very difficult to understand her. But the more time we spent together, then I could better hear. I started to understand which sounds she pronounces differently.
Yeah.
And then I could immediately convert those sounds, and then I could get the meaning. And because it's a pattern. It's always the same way. They bend the language a bit. So that's the accent. So it comes with practice. The same when I was in South Korea, in the beginning I was lost, like what are they talking about? But it took some time, and then I could understand them clearly. So
it's getting late here as we're recording. It's been a long day, so I want to get to my final 2 segments that I do in every episode. And the first one is my personal growth segment. And we've talked about some ways that you've tried some different things and really taken advantage of opportunities. Is there something else from your life that you've really been working on improving and have found that it's important for you to be working on yourself in this way and really trying to improve yourself?
Yeah. I don't know. It's usually I'm just going with the flow. Or recently, as we just got married with my wife, now I have more other priorities in life, and I'm more concerned about being a better husband and these things. So it's new challenges for me as well. Until now, it was the academic and also still the career. That's an ongoing thing. But
I suppose for many years it was just you worrying about you, and now
yes. Usually it was never like someone told me what to do. I always talked with people and I got inspired from them, and then I set a goal. It was not like that I always achieved the goals, but it gave the direction. And for me it's always important to to set a goal and have a direction. I have different goals for the next 3 years and then the next 5 years, but to get some direction. And even if we don't succeed, we get forward.
Yeah.
But I don't know what else I was improving or focusing on myself in the last.
But I think that's a good one to really grow as someone that can't be totally independent now, that has an interdependence here.
Yes. It has also the advantage and the disadvantage. So for all these journeys I had in my life, I always had this feeling it would be nice to share it with someone, and I've been going through a lot of phases in my life during these journeys, and I always miss the partner in those travelings, and now finally have the partner. So I found the right one. All these journeys ended up in with the right person. So it's good. So, but that's the maybe it also reflects that the good things we have to go and search. It's not that we sit and they will come to us. So it's you have to take the step. And during these journeys you really find out what makes you happy and what you should prioritize in your life. So sometimes people tend to follow others. I like meeting with others and then just go. Or now with my wife we go together. So
share some knowledge, but then take your own step forward based on what you're thinking.
Yes. Learn from each other. So there's always I had some inspiring people. I can name a few who really made an impact on my life, and the reason why I met with those people, it's because of the journeys I took because of the previous person. So whenever I chose the next direction, I ended up meeting with someone who I could have a talk, and maybe it completely changed my course. So it's always going forward. That's the most important.
My final segment, I call it the being wrong segment, but it's really about changing your mind. So I want, if you can come up with a story to share where you've had a big change of your mind, the way you do things, the way you think about things, where you recognize that the old version, the old Tibor, however many years ago, weeks, months, or years ago, that version of you, you weren't doing it right. And then you came to realize that the way you do things now is better, and it's worth sharing because maybe someone else can learn from it.
Yes.
What's a story you would share?
Yes. What I was thinking, just maybe because it came immediately to my mind, is when you travel and meet with people, then you start to know more and more people. But in the other end, I was trying to also stay in touch with old friends. And sometimes it's very difficult, and sometimes just have to let people go, because you grow in one direction, they grow another direction, and it's not always healthy to push yourself back to an old version, the version who you were when you were together with those people, instead of growing and becoming a new Tibor, and find the people who you really be yourself, instead of pushing yourself back to the old status.
So that means you're suggesting that you would be wrong to pretend that you were someone that you used to be, so you could converse with someone that you used to find maybe more important in your life at a previous time.
Yes. It comes back to the values, like what you find important when, let's say, before I started to travel, that was for me like those problems that I had at that time, and those things that, how should I say this? So that I was worried back then. Some of my old friends are still worried about those things, but when I look at it, it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's so easy to solve that problem. It's, but they don't. And sometimes it's not good to try to stay in that environment. So you have to let them go, and just grow.
Mm-hmm.
And life will bring you new people, and you can fulfill yourself. So.
Well, I'm pleased that I'm one of the people that once met you, got forced to share a cabin with you. Not forced, but we were assigned to the same cabin, got to really get to know you for a few days, had some cool experiences. We watched the baby sea turtles hatch and come out.
Yes.
I have a photo of you like holding one of them, and then I got to take one down to the ocean that day. And when I told the story of me scuba diving at the Great Barrier Reef, I told it with George, my first podcast episode with George. It was, I started to go, and then like I panicked and gave up. It was George and you, I think I mentioned your name in that conversation with him, that went and had the experience, and that's on video. George was wearing the GoPro, but then I later went down and got the experience as well, because I didn't give up, but I felt like giving up that day. But you were there. You're part of all these, like, some really cool memories for me. You were right there.
Definitely. That was a very memorable moment in my life. Some people, if they do scuba diving for many, many times, but if you do it for the first time, and I never did that before, that was not horrifying, but I had my pulses going up, so so that was very, very, very nice. And that was again a time in Australia when I felt like I can do anything. It's this is what life should bring to me, these new experiences, and that was really, really nice time to meet with you. So
saying yes to an opportunity, going for it. The other memory that just came to me was we were on the island of the old coral that dies and becomes an island, and it was an island of birds, and they're just pooping constantly. There were so many that I think what happened, they would all be pooping, and they poop on another one, and they get so much poop on that one, and then that one would die because it had too much poop on it to fly. But then that's what made the trees grow. It was crazy. We got to walk around in this thing. It's kind of weird, kind of stinky, but also a neat place to understand this is how an ecosystem works.
Yeah, that's again a place that I only seen in movies. So that was in Australia. That 6 months was like a dream. But yes, that's kind of my not my fear, but I don't want this old experiences just to be a dream. I like to do the next.
Yeah, more dreams.
More dreams. So not to have it as something that, yeah, you remember back then we were doing this, and 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and let it all fade away. It's I would like to keep
if
this
you'd like
up.
to, then you will. You've got the globe over there. You're putting the nails in all the places you've been. You're wearing the University of Sydney shirt. If you didn't have that, we wouldn't have met. You wouldn't have met your wife. So, and Brad wouldn't be here either.
Yeah, it's a small world.
Yeah.
I'm really, really happy that you visited me, and I'm flattered that you came to me to visit me in Denmark. So that's.
Hey, I've never been here. I'm happy to be here. Happy to see you again. Happy to meet your wife. This has been a really neat experience. Thank you for having this conversation with me.
Thank you very much for coming and visiting us here.